Welcome to She's a Full-On Monet, a digital lifestyle magazine for women. Every week, our editor-in-chief, Kelly Castillo, along with Megan Block and special guests, participate in a deep dive discussion about recent articles and topics we have covered. We invite you to become part of our community where everyone's welcome. You can totally sit with us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of She's a Full-On Monet, the podcast. I'm your host, Kelly, and I have with me, as always, Megan.
Hi, Kelly. How are you today?
Good, thank you. You guys are going to have to be patient with us if our connection is a little staticky. It's a little staticky on my end, so that's why I say that. There is a wildfire burning just like 3 miles down the road from me right now. So I think that might be why the Wi-Fi is a little bit staticky today. But you know, if I get up and run away, it's because I just got an evacuation text. So let's see how this goes.
Let's go.
Let's go. It's California. We're used to it.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about something that I think I asked when I read this article, and you know, the topic idea when it was first pitched, and then the article when it came about is one of the things that I asked my daughter if she thought that, you know, I successfully did this, and she said yes. So that made me feel really good. So we're talking today about explaining love to your children, and it is Valentine's Day week. So I think it is perfect time to talk about this.
Absolutely. It's perfect. It's so great because it's like, you know, like the article states, like love to everyone is personal, you know, like it's very unique and very, you know, but at the same time, there's certain things that we all kind of do as parents, or we should focus on when we are explaining and expressing love to our children, and how, you know, the different stages. I have a 5-year-old and I have a 10-year-old. So the way I express love to each one of them can vary, you know, because of their ages, or how I explain love to them can vary depending on their ages. So it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, I think it is a really interesting topic, and it's a really important topic because one thing, you know, I see a lot of people in their older years past childhood having a really hard time in relationships, and, you know, resolving childhood traumas, or just relating to a partner in a way that's healthy. So I think that obviously starts really young. And I mean, I think the way that we model love to our children is such an important thing that we have to be conscious of it all the time. I have so many friends who have recently had their first baby, or are expecting their first baby, or something. They always ask me for advice because, you know, I have 4 kids I've raised, they're grown now. They always ask me, oh, you know, give me some mom advice. You're such a good mom, or whatever. And I tell them that you need to have a plan. Like, you and your partner need to have a plan of how you're going to raise this child. I totally winged it, but it would have been helpful if we had talked ahead of time about all of the, you know, child rearing things that could come up and how we expected to handle that. Because what I hear so often is, oh, you know, I'm just going to do my best and I'm going to love my kid. Well, I know from not my own experience necessarily, but people close to me who had very traumatic childhoods and who don't have great relationships with their parents. And I've also met those parents, and I know that they tried their best. I know they did their best, and I know they love their children, but sometimes it's not enough. And if you know that you and your personality or your conflict resolution skills have things that you need to work on, you know, work that shit out before it impacts your kid. Go to therapy, like get some self-help books, like listen to some self-help podcasts, like start working on yourself before the kid even comes, because you have to have a plan of how you're going to react to all the things that happen during childhood. As you know, Megan, you've got still young kids, like they push your buttons, they push the limits.
Yeah, I was today years old when I realized I am winging it. Like I should have, I don't know if having a plan, because sometimes it's like I had a plan for how my life was going to go. That didn't pan out. So sometimes plans shift based on, I don't know, for example, like a pandemic, you know, like life things happen, but to have a general layout is very good because, you know, my parents loved each other, but I'm going to be honest. I never once, ever, and this is not dramatic at all, heard them say, I love you to each other once. They were very, And so I feel like we look to our parents when we're children to see what is this love thing, and not even just, I'm not even just talking about the love between a parent and a child. It's like, how do I, as you grow older, you model what you look for in a partner after something that, and we're all products of our childhood. That's not what I'm, it's a long subject, but what I'm trying to say is, like, if you don't see your parents say I love you to each other, that could change how you see love, how you show love, how how guarded you are. So it's very important to have a plan so that you don't have things come up. So because I feel like if you're winging it and you have two people that are just kind of going through it and going through those stages, because it is crazy. They push your buttons individually. You as a couple push each other's buttons, and they see that sometimes pan out. It's good to have a general plan and layout so that when those moments come up, you guys can handle it in a healthy way that is showcasing what you would like your children to have in a partner, and to showcase how they would treat their child in a moment of stress. I am such a product of trying to figure that out at the moment, because when stressful moments come up, I tend to like give into those feelings, and I forget for a millisecond, as we all do as mothers, that I have kids watching me, and it's so hard because we're humans and we want to feel, and there's moments of hardship, but you're still a mom and they're still looking at you, so it's just, it's a tough nut, this parenthood thing. So if you're just going into it going like, oh, I'm just gonna love him and we'll figure it out, like, good luck. I'm doing it now, and it's hard.
I want to say, like, no parent wakes up in the morning and thinks, how am I going to traumatize my child today? How am I going to negatively impact them today? They don't. We're all flawed humans, and we're carrying our past traumas forward, and we're trying our best. But you have to be proactive about not just avoiding the specific trauma that you had, but also just being positive and having positive impacts on it. That's proactive. You can't be reactive. You can't just react to what happens in your day. You actually have to be proactive and have some sort of at least like outline of and I know exactly to your point. One of the most important ways that we teach our children about love is how we model healthy relationships to them. And I mean, that's the exact reason that I got divorced with my first marriage, because I could see that we were not modeling healthy relationships, and that had become what was normal to my children, for people to speak to each other that way, for raised voices, for things like that. And that's not what I wanted. I would not have allowed either of my daughters to be spoken to the way that I was allowing myself to be spoken to. And I was just, one day I suddenly snapped and I said, what am I doing? Like, why am I allowing this? I'm a bad bitch. I just was like, no more.
It's sad. Not a lot of people, or they do realize it, but they put so much first. And when it's like, you have to realize, coming from a product of a family who it just was not a good family dynamic, but they stayed together for the kids. That's so awful. Okay.
Exactly.
I am not lying to you. My brother and I at one point were asking my parents to split up because it was just that toxic, and it was that consistently toxic. And they were just like, well, and then they ended up splitting up like after I got out of high school. I'm like, cool, I got to ride that whole storm. And then you guys were like, we're better off without each other. No shit.
Right.
But you don't want to hold on for the kids, because you're showing them such toxic things that they're going to carry into their next relationships. I promise you
that is exactly it, because kids don't miss anything. They are little sponges. They are hearing and seeing everything. And I was trying, I think we all do this as parents. We all want to protect our children from our specific trauma that we experienced. So like for me, my dad has been divorced many times, and I had a series of stepmothers as a child. So I did not want to get divorced. I wanted to have a healthy long-term marriage. And I did everything I could to make that happen, what it did was cause me not to see that I was doing different damage by staying. And I mean, my partner now, he lived through he's Iranian, his country's revolution, and this, losing everything, and severe kind of poverty level situation happened when the country fell apart. So he protected his kids from his specific trauma by working like a crazy person to amass resources and protect them from ever living like that. this bad side of that was that he wasn't around much. So when we try to protect our kids from the exact trauma that we had, we can inflict new trauma. So we have to be just really conscious of that. But I think if you and your partner don't have a healthy dynamic when you argue, if you are still working that out, then you guys may need to make the decision that if we have a conflict within our relationship, we're going to talk about it privately in our room with the door closed when the kids are asleep. Like, we're going to work it out when not in front of them. The best thing you could do, obviously, is to model healthy conflict resolution to your kids. It's not a bad thing for your kids to see you argue. If you argue healthy, if you argue in a healthy way, you don't get personal, you don't attack each other, you're not screaming at each other. There obviously no physical violence. Like, if you guys can sit down and hash an argument out as a team, oh my God, that's the best model of conflict resolution your kids will ever get. I mean,
yeah, because you definitely don't want your kids to think that conflict of any kind is bad, because, and I have to always tell my 10-year-old that, because we live in a smaller space. So if my husband and I have an issue, like, it's heard, and we don't do any of the things you listed, but there's still some concern from a kid. And I have to explain to her, like, hey, do you and your best friends ever disagree on something? Like, it's okay to have a conflict as long as it's worked out in a healthy way.
Because that's what you don't want them to do. You don't want them to think that my parents never argued. Well, yeah, they did. You just didn't see it. My parents never argued. So the first argument I have with my partner, I'm going to leave, because obviously we're not meant for each other. That's not healthy either.
No, absolutely not. Like, conflict of that's a healthy sign for a relationship, as long as it doesn't involve the things that you just listed. It's really hard when you got, like, that caveman brain, they call, so to speak, working in you when you're angry at your partner and you realize that your children can hear, but that's maturity. That's the part we signed up for when we became parents, that might be really hard, but it's the thing you have to do, because the trauma that once that argument is fixed between you and your partner, now there's new trauma with your children, because they heard it, they saw things, they're learning how to solve problems through you. So they see that, they may think that that's okay. There's a lot going on there. And it's a lot on our shoulders as parents. You really break it all down. You're like, well, dang, we're all humans, right? If something comes up, human response happens. But when you're a parent, you got to curb that so that it doesn't create more problems.
We're being realistic. No couple is perfect, and every couple is going to have an argument where something is said that shouldn't have been said, or some heat of the moment kind of stuff happens. And that's when it's super important to have your kids see you, like, apologize. Oh, hold on 1 second. Hold on. Honey, do you need me?
Yeah, I just did my list. I don't know whether you could.
It's on my nightstand. It's on my nightstand.
Kenzie, you okay?
1 second, Megan.
Kenny. I'm still recording. Just want to make sure you're right. I see myself.
So sorry.
No worries. Seth gave me a chance to, like, cough. Felt great. All right.
So if you have one of those circumstances where an argument happens in a way that you would prefer it not happen in front of the kids, it's really important for your children to see if you've done something that you're not proud of, or said something you shouldn't have. It's important for them to see you apologize. And not just to your partner. I mean, if you snap at your kids or yell at your kids or something, that's a huge model of loving behavior, is to come and say, you know what, I'm sorry I raised my voice at you today. I had a really bad day, but that's no excuse. And, are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Like, that is modeling love. It's modeling, because love is not puppies and rainbows all day, every day.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. It's And those are the moments that they'll take with them. And when they grow older is, they're not going to remember that like the incident. They're going to remember how it was handled afterwards. They're going to remember, how mom and dad spoke with them or didn't, or how they were like, they're just, they're learning this as they go, and you're around all the time, and you're home, and you're safe, and you are so they are looking to you more than anyone for advice on how to be, and how to grow. So it's such a big responsibility, but it's such a gift all at the same time, because to be able to show love, I love being able to like express love to my kids. And I feel like every time I do, like, it's really selfish for me. Like when I hug my kids or tell them I love them, it's just because like I that's the feeling that I'm doing, but I think the constantness of that is in the long run giving them a really good foundation of what love is about and how to express love in a healthy way. It's no means perfect, but I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job so far with it.
Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
we all love to tell our children that we love them and, hug them. And I love you is something that is said really like, I don't know, maybe too much now. I love this. I love that. I love you. I love that person. I love cake. I love bagels, like whatever. Notice it's all bread. I said all bread things.
The word's been dampened a little because it's been used a lot. Yes, I see.
Yeah. So I think it's important that, we explain to our kids that it's more than a word. You have to model it in your actions. You have to show love. And one thing that I read this book when I was in, I want to say like my mid-20s, the love languages, 5 love languages book. And that was a game changer to me, and how I love the people in my life in a way that is meaningful to them specifically. Because everyone has a different love language, and it's okay. Like it's my one of my daughters, she doesn't really like to be hugged on, and that's okay. And she will just say, now she's an adult, but even when she was younger, she would just say, someone would say, oh, aren't you going to go hug Uncle Bob or whatever? And she'd be like, that's not really my love language. Like I'll give him a high five or something. And like, we can I'll say something nice to him or whatever, but like, that's not what she's comfortable with. And that doesn't mean that she doesn't love that person. So that's important to explain to children, and they will get it. Those are pretty simple things, the different love languages. I think it's like physical touch, I know is one, words of affirmation, tasks, like doing tasks, gifts. Yeah. Yeah. Doing tasks for someone, like, and
yes.
What is the 5th one?
Is it like spending time together?
Yeah. Quality time. That's the one.
Yeah. That's big for my 10-year-old. Like I know when I took her to Disneyland on Tuesday, and it's honestly, it's never about what I buy her. It's never about what we do. It's about the fact that like, she tells me all day long and even the next day, like, thank you for spending the day with me. And it's like kids, if you listen to them and very in tune with them, you can tell what is their love language. They may be able to tell you themselves, but like I can tell that quality time spent is very important to my 10-year-old. And so I try and push that more because I feel like that's hitting her harder, because that's, when my love language is being met, like I feel better.
Yeah. And
I feel more understood.
If your kids are at an age where they can understand this concept, talk to them about the different love languages and explain it to them, and you can say like, my youngest, her love language is definitely physical touch. She wants to be snuggled on. And
that's, yeah, so is mine. It's the best to have one kid like that. Cause you're like, my oldest was like the one where it's like no touchy. And I was like, oh, and like, when am I going to get a kid I can cuddle? Yes. I love those ones.
Yeah. My oldest son and my oldest daughter neither one of them really like to be touched. And I'm not much of a physical touch person either. So when my youngest wants all the snuggles, I mean, and I had to tell her when she was really young, like, you need to tell me when you're needing snuggles, because I won't always know. It doesn't come as natural to me. That's not my particular love language. So it's okay to say, mommy, I need snuggle time. And she will, she's 20 now, and she'll still text me, I need snuggle time. And I'm like, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome.
But it's important that we teach our kids that love is action. Love is an action word. And it's really easy to say, oh, I love you. And it's easy for guys to say, hey, baby, I love you, or whatever. And then do absolutely the minimum.
Yeah.
that's very important to teach early that love is actions, because
It's not just a word.
right, that kind of information can also help keep kids safe, because another adult who maybe has bad intentions can use that love word also. Oh, I'm doing this because I love you. And so teaching them also what love isn't is just as important as teaching what love is. Love shouldn't make you feel bad about yourself. It shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't have to be a secret. It shouldn't feel unsafe. I mean, there's a whole, we could do a whole show about that. But if we teach our kids from the beginning that love is just saying love, the word love is just a word, it has no power behind it unless the action is behind it that gives it that power.
That's very true.
Because if you don't ever have those tough conversations with your kids, it can make them kind of an easier mark for a predator, because that they'll say, oh, this is because I love you so much. And they don't know that that's wrong unless someone has told them. Like, love shouldn't make you feel bad. You shouldn't have to hide it or lie to anybody about it. And that keeps going as they're older. I mean, when kids, I mean, I think about this more with my girls, but it should be equal, boys and girls. But when you get to be a teenager, most people have not the healthiest relationships when they're teenagers, because we're all still trying to figure out like everything. But knowing that, love shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't make you feel shitty about yourself. It shouldn't be something that, you can't openly express. All of those things will help protect them from relationships that are unhealthy from in their young adult years, whether that gets to the point of being abusive or whether it's just like, hey, I have a public girlfriend, but I really love you. Let's have this side relationship. Like any of that. We want to very clearly explain that is not how love should feel. Love should bring out the best version of yourself, not make you feel like you need to. That's another thing. Love shouldn't make you feel like you have to change things about yourself. I'm really big on loving people exactly as they are today and not for their potential. That's a mistake a lot of young women, probably men too, I don't know, I've never been a young man, make. They love people on their potential. Oh, but this person can be so great if I'll just fix him and then it'll be great. Oh, sweetie, it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. There's like moments when we're talking where I forget we're recording and I'm just like learning about, like, I'm learning and I'm just like, wow, that's absolutely spot on. It's so true, because yeah, I never had those conversations with my mom, and my boyfriends were not perfect, but I'm like, how many of those could I have avoided had we had this talked about what love isn't? Because, I think a lot of parents, maybe me included, also just assume that kids might know what love isn't based on, comments, what they think, what they assume, what they see. But it's very important to put those things out there too, because you're right. There's so many things that could be avoided if that conversation is made. And I didn't even think about that until now. So
yeah, I know for myself as a teenager, because again, no one ever had these conversations with me. And myself as a teenager, I had been in a relationship where there was like extreme possessiveness and jealousy and controlling behavior. And in my mind, I thought, he's so jealous and he's so controlling because he loves me so much. Yeah. This is just an expression of how incredibly he loves me to be so possessive over me. Well, in my 16-year-old brain, that made sense, but that's not love. Like, no, that's control. That's a whole other thing. So those are important distinctions to make when as teenagers, and now, I mean, my God, it's starting so early, that pressure to become physical with a partner gets really heavy. Understanding that love doesn't make you do things you don't want to do. Not like that. Doesn't cross boundaries like that is really important. On the opposite side of that, when I've taught my kids, and I would tell them this even when they were middle elementary school age, that when you love someone, you put that person first, and it only works if they're doing the same. So, except for parent-child relationships, obviously those are never balanced. But I would tell my kids, I'm spending my whole weekend at this cheerleading tournament or whatever, not because I want to be here. I'm not, I'm not having fun, but I love you. And this is important to you. And that makes it important to me. And so that's why I'm here. I'm here to support you. I'm here. And I'm here because I love you. That's
I
important.
love how you put it all out there. You know, I don't want to be here, but I love you and you love it. So I love it. You know?
But as kids, that never would enter our minds if someone doesn't articulate it to us.
Oh gosh, my parents lost half, like a lot of their time because of me and my brother's soccer tournaments, this and that. It never registered until I'm like, dang, that's a lot of sacrifice, you know, but it's good for them to know. I feel like if my mom had said that, I would have been like, well, yeah, you're right. I guess there is a lot of sacrifice going in. We just assume parents are put on this planet to, you know, make us happy and do the things we are supposed to do. You know, as children, we think that they are here for us.
Right. And you shouldn't say it because you're trying to make them feel guilty, or you're trying to get something that you want from them, or you want to thank you. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about explaining the level of that we go to for our kids. And when they would get to the point where they would like forget to bring their lunch like 4 days in a row. And I would have to say, you know what, I'm bringing it to you because I love you. And the thought of you being hungry makes me sad, but I'm not your personal assistant. So what are we going to do tomorrow to make sure you remember your lunch? Because at some point I'm going to say, even though I love you so very much, I brought it to you 4 days in a row. I'm not doing it again. So, yeah, you have to make sure that
I love you so much, but I went without lunch for 3 days and I lived, so you can too today, right? Because
exactly. And be like, now I feel like you're taking advantage of how much I love you. So if you're hungry tomorrow because you forgot your lunch, that natural consequence might help you to remember the following day. So
I love that.
Yeah. When we one thing I've learned in raising all 4 of my kids is when we are explain to our children why we are doing what we're doing while we're doing it is much more meaningful than just saying, because I said so, or letting it just be assumed. Of course.
1,000%.
Yeah. If we explain the reason why I'm saying don't have that a half hour before dinner is because I know if you have that, then I'm in the midst of cooking and you're not going to eat this. And that's going to upset me because I spent my time, and you're going to be hungry later because you didn't have a solid meal and you're not going to feel great tomorrow. Like, give the reasons. Because otherwise that you can't assume that they just get it. They don't.
No, they don't. They're little adults in training. It's, you know, is there such a thing as loving too much? I feel like I am a person that doesn't let my kids feel the reality of their choices because I want to save them from things too much. Do you know what I mean? Like, can you love too much to where it handicaps them when they get older and they go out into the world and they don't know how to do laundry? You know what I mean? Like, can you love too much? Because we're talking about expressing love. Is there such a thing as too much love in the way I'm trying to say? Right?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're trying to say. And I debated this so much when my kids were getting into teenage years, because I did everything for them. And I make them do chores at home. I did their laundry up until they moved out of the house. I cleaned up after them.
Even
I helped them clean their room, like
covering them and doing their homework for them so that they don't turn it in late. Like, can you love your kid too much that it hinders them from being an actual working adult when they go out into the world?
That was something I was seriously concerned about when my kids were teenagers, and that something people expressed to me, like, you're not letting them do things for themselves. And my response was, my childhood in many ways, long story, was cut short. And I wanted them to have every minute of their childhood that they could and be kids for as long as they possibly could be without having adult responsibilities, because I had adult responsibilities way too young. So that, again, that's me fixing problems than causing other ones. But I think the only thing that saved my kids from becoming like spoiled and having that entitlement attitude with having everything done for them is that I explained it every step of the way. Okay. I explained it all along. I would say I would say, I did your laundry. It's folded in the basket in your room. You just need to put it away. And I would say, next year when you go off to school, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to do it for yourself. But I like doing it for you now. I like caring for you. That makes me feel good. I'm not doing it because you're expecting me to do it. I'm doing it because I like caring for you. It fulfills something for me. And I think explaining that helps a lot. But if I had to do it over again, I probably would have had my kids figure things out somewhat early. But when they went away to college, they did have to figure all things out, and they grew up really quickly, and they figured it out. And they would FaceTime, they still FaceTime video me. Can I put this in with this for laundry or whatever?
The job's never done being a parent, right?
Right.
Yeah. I just curious because like I feel like I stop arguments pretty quickly with my girls, and I wonder, am I keeping them from naturally learning conflict resolution together? Like I catch Emma's homework mistakes, and like I catch her, like just moments where I'm like, am I hurting or harming her? Not really, but am I hindering her growth by loving her so much that I don't want her to have a disappointing moment? You know what I mean? Where it's like, I feel like you got to like reel that in as parents sometimes, and realize that love can also be in the form of lessons, life lessons.
Yeah, it's a really harsh world out there, and life is the best teacher we have. You can't insulate your children from pain forever. So what we can do for them, I mean, I did, and because I knew that life itself was going to mess with them on its own. I didn't need to add to it, but that's just what worked for me. And I understand that might not work for other people, but my oldest daughter is in a master's program, and she still sent me a paper she wrote yesterday so I could edit it for her. I didn't write it for her. I just edited it because she's not great at grammar, and there's always a lot of misspellings and typos. Like,
there's a lot of adult kids living at home. There's a lot of adult kids that, mom and dad pay for a lot of things. And it's like, when is love a not healthy, like, you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I did see this a lot with the friends of my kids growing up. A lot of entitlement, a lot of being just given everything without any kind of conversation behind it.
Exactly. Just
my kids got cars when they turned 16. They weren't brand new cars. They weren't super nice cars, but they were cars. That's a free car. But their friends mostly got brand new, right off the lot cars. And are you ringing?
My phone is with my daughter right now. I forgot my 10-year-old got a phone for her birthday. Who's calling her? I'm sorry. We'll just ignore that ringing. Yeah, I guess there's a phone ringing. Go ahead.
But and a few of them totaled the car, and immediately the next day had another brand new one. And there's nothing, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If you can do that and you want to do that, that's your choice. But there was no conversation behind it. Where with my kids, I bought them a car. I said, hey, you're so fortunate. You're getting a free car, and I'm going to cover your car insurance and registration too. But your job right now is to be a student, go to school, get good grades, do what your job is. And when you get to the point where you can buy your own car, you can buy whatever you want. Right now, this is what I'm giving you.
I also remember that time of their life, and they had so much going on that as parents at that point, it's also a big help to us if they can transport themselves.
Right. And I explained that too. I said, at one point I was driving 4 kids to 3 different schools. So yeah, this is freeing me up. So it's worth it for me to do this for you. But sometimes the kids would be like, why can't I have this? And I would be like, because while your parents might have resources, we might be doing okay. You're broke as fuck. You have no job.
Yes.
You have no job.
How much money per hour do you make at your no job you have?
Yeah. Excuse me, child with no job. What you get, and you don't have a fit. This is the car we're gifting to you. You're welcome. And they would be like, well, so-and-so got a brand new car. And I'd be like, lucky her.
Go live with them.
Must be nice. Yeah. Well, when beggars can't be choosers, you are broke.
Right.
If you want to work. And my oldest daughter, she exactly did this. We got her a car for her 16th birthday. She did not like it. It was an old clunker Mercedes. Someone's grandma's old car. So it had hardly any miles. It was like a tank. It was like a tank.
I would have still taken it today, but oh well.
She took it. She was happy with it, but it was not what she wanted. So she, from 16 to 18, she worked her little tail off. Every job, every hustle she could. And right after her 18th birthday, literally the same month she turned 18, she went to the Mercedes dealership and bought herself a brand new car. And herself. And so I was like, okay, go girl, get it.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. I want to be your daughter when I grow up. She is my goals as an adult, and I nannied for her. So she's so boss. It's so great. And she doesn't need anyone for it. She just goes and gets it done. And she's so fantastic. That's great.
But
and
that was
from you teaching them some really good lessons. That
was the conversation we had. Here is your free car. And that is what I'm willing to do for you. If that is not what you wanted, I get it. When you turn 18 and can legally sign a loan, get whatever you want, but I'm going to pay cash for what I can afford right now. And that frees me up from having to drive you around. So I'm doing it mostly for me. The car is still in my name, all that. And they understood that. I mean, but my dad bought me a car for my 15th birthday and we had no conversation about it. Literally, he handed me the keys. He asked me what kind of car you want. I told him, he handed me the keys, said, best of luck to you. And I treated that car like absolute garbage. I had no idea how much you paid for it. I just figured if something happens to it, he'll probably get me another one. Like I had such a bad attitude about it, but there had been zero conversations. If you ask me right now, like how much money my dad made when I was a kid, or whether we were okay on our bills and whether things were paid for, I have no idea. No idea.
Same.
Yeah.
I mean, now looking back at it, I go, wow, were my parents like doctors? Because I'm like, how do we have a 2-story house in Southern California? And I'm sitting here struggling. But like, I mean, my mom was a teacher. So I was like, I know now teachers don't do well, but back then I was like, yeah, my parents, they're like, you look around at your surroundings and what your friends have and you think it's all same, right? And
yeah.
like,
I had no idea.
One, so why don't I have one? Oh, the concept of there's just no concept of how things work when you're
there's no concept. But now, I mean, since my kids were older teenagers, they have seen my partner and I sit down and do our finances and put together budgets and figure out our holdings and do our trust and things like that. And we've included them in those conversations because that's valuable information. They don't teach that, in high school or college. Like that's something that everybody kind of needs to understand. And I mean, to this day, the kids, there's a lot of things they don't pay for on their own. So they're still on my phone plan. They're still on my car insurance. So they've had to ask me like, how much does that cost? Like, cause someday I'm going to have to cover this. Like, good thing you asked. Here's the breakdown. And they were on my health insurance until they aged out. So it's important to have those conversations and it's important to explain the things we're doing for our kids, what our motivation is behind it. Mm-hmm. So if I keep my kids on my phone plan, and I just had a conversation with all 4 of them about this. And I said, look, it's not that you're not old enough that you can do your own phone plan. But this is how much extra it's costing me per month versus this is what it would cost if you went out and got your own phone plan. Each line cost me like $20 extra a month. If you went out and got your own, it would be at least $100 a month. So I'm doing this because it financially makes sense for all of us. But not because, you have a free ride. That's not the goal of it. The goal of it is just to do what makes the most sense. $20 per kid times 4 versus $100 per kid times 4. I mean, you can Venmo me the $20.
They understand why. And that's exactly good. Versus like, oh, I'm being taken care of because I mean, like I was, money wasn't just like, oh, just give in or throw in, but there was no conversations about this stuff. So when I aged off of my dad's insurance, or, like I was no longer able to be on his AAA membership, or there's certain things that I were like having to now add into my budget, I was like, oh, I had no idea until it was now my problem, exactly. And then what, and it shouldn't naturally be like, oh, well, it's my problem, so my dad will give me money to cover it. It's like, no, now I have to figure it out. But it would have been, I don't know, it just would have been good to have the conversation, because then you figure it adds value to each thing that you have, and you see it as valuable. You made that whole point when you said that you were given a car and you treated it like trash, right? If you don't understand the true value of it, you're not going to treat it with value. So
exactly,
that's, same with love.
If someone had explained to me that, like, if you do this regular maintenance on your car, then it will last you this many more years before you have to buy your own car. There would have been some realization there. And I mean, these are all things that help our children navigate the adult world and understand, why we do the things that we do, what we're doing, that's purely just an action of love and an expression of our love for them, and what we're doing because it's practical and it makes sense. And that carries over. Like we are able to get our kids a lot of things and material things. And when we do that, we explain why we're doing it, not just like this equates to how the more money I spend on you equates to the more love I have for you. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's not, I mean, I know gifts are one of the 5 love languages, but it could literally be a flower or flowers you picked on the side of the road. Like, it doesn't need to be something extravagant. And
It's what the
families,
gift means and represents. I mean, versus
right.
the value, the monetary value of it, because that's just somebody putting a price tag on something. That doesn't mean
Right.
anything.
And families who have less means and are less able to do that, it absolutely is an expression of that they have less love for their children. And those are things that are important. We talked about this at Christmas, of how, like, if Santa brings my next door neighbor a PlayStation 5 and Santa brings me a bouncy ball, like, what the fuck? Was I less good? Like, what is going on? So, I mean, those kinds of there's been a big push lately to keep some very simple gifts from Santa, if you're doing Santa, and have the more expensive gifts be from parents or grandparents.
It's about time. And I'm sorry for all the parents beforehand, because it sucks, like, buying like the sweetest gift of the bunch and then having to put some dude's name on it that didn't
Well, and you need to be sensitive to the fact that your kids are going to school with kids who are above and below you economically.
That's also very, very, very true. But I'm also thinking, like, it's great to, like, if you're going to make a big financial decision to gift your child something, that should be something that's thought through and from your parents. It shouldn't be from someone who visits every single household and every single kid and decides who's good and who's not good. Well, what if that kid was fantastic, but the parents just simply cannot afford what the kid wanted Santa to bring them? How is that fair?
It's not.
It's always been that way. This concept is not new, but I'm glad we're finally awoke and finally we're awake to it, because it should be something more on a smaller scale, but for some reason we put the biggest gift from him. So I like that. I think that's great.
And I think, to get back to the love conversation, I think one of the most important things that we can talk to our children about when it comes to love, especially parental love, is the difference between parental love and partner love. One of the biggest differences, at least for me, is that parental love is extremely unconditional. My kids know that even if they completely screw up and do something awful, they can call me. Wherever they could be in jail, they can call me. They could be on the other side of the world, they can call me. They can, have lied about something and have to call me for help. And I will come. I will walk, I will get on a rowboat, I will drive, I will fly, whatever, I will get to you. And I'm not going to start out by saying, how could you do this? You told me that. I will just help you solve your problem. And then later, when everyone's calm, we will talk about it. They know that. And I have gotten those middle of the night phone calls that, Mom, I need you, and drop everything, go. I'm not saying I wouldn't do that for my partner, but my love for my partner is not unconditional. I have boundaries there that if, there are conditions to that love relationship. There are things that he could do that I don't know if they would necessarily make me not love him or have love in my heart for him, but I certainly wouldn't choose to stay with him if he did certain things. And I think that's universal. Yeah. So I think there is this Disney romantic idea of love being the happy, and then all it says is happily ever after, right? There's no, that's what they leave us with. What does that look like? I mean, let's go revisit Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella like 10 years later and 2 kids later and see,
or like
how's that working out?
7 days later. I mean, they just met the homie. Like, what if he like has a really bad snoring problem they can't get over? Like, it could be not that long until they're like, oh, this is not
right
what I signed up for, Like,
what if he flies into a rage when he's angry? Like, who knows?
Yeah, like he's just got some weird thing you can't get into. Like, there's so many things in that make a relationship work that it is not, oh, hey, you're cute, oh, you're a princess, happily ever after. This is not how the world works. But
right, but that's the romantic idea that all rom-coms have taught us, and that's even what we say in our wedding vows, right? For better, for worse, sickness and health. Like, how far do we take that? What are the things that break that? How do we determine what that means? If I make a vow for sickness and health, if you spiral into horrible active addiction and are destroying our finances and becoming abusive, is that sickness and health? It is, technically. Does that mean that I have to stay and I have to make this work? So everyone needs to determine, or, it could be an abusive relationship. It could be adultery. It could be, there's a lot of bad things that could happen. We've talked about emotional infidelity, financial infidelity on this show before. We all know what, physical or sexual infidelity looks like. And if it's a sex addiction, if it's a porn addiction, a gambling addiction, those are technically sicknesses. So
I've seen couples weather insane storms and come out so much better from it. I've seen couples, realize that those are like red flag breaking moments and break up and find better relationships for it. I mean, I feel like it's such an individual
choice. Your
and
boundaries are your own.
Your choice may not be the same as your partner's choice. You may be down to like, oh, I'm going to change, I'm going to fix this. And your partner would be like, I did not sign up for that. And that's also okay. You love yourself first, and loving yourself first shows your children and your partner a good version of what love should be. And then you're able to teach your children what love is. Because if you don't love yourself, how on earth are you going to teach your children what love is? You're not even putting yourself first,
Exactly. And that's one of the most important things that we teach our children, besides modeling healthy relationships and conflict resolution, loving ourselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, your children hear what you say to yourself in the mirror. They hear how your actions are towards yourself. Yeah. Do you love yourself? Do you treat yourself with love? Do you do the things for yourself that you would do for your daughter, for your child? I mean, do you? That's something really important. And I know we don't like to talk about celebrity relationships on this site or this podcast. It's one of our kind of like hard and fast rules. We don't dissect other people's relationships, but I don't know if anybody just read that Vogue article that Kim Kardashian was talking about her divorce. And I won't go into the whole thing because that's obviously their own personal relationship, but she said she chose herself. It came down to the choosing herself and her own happiness. And relationships are complicated. I believe in, the institution of being in a committed relationship, whatever that means for you, whether it means marriage or just partnership. But there is something to be said for choosing yourself. Mm-hmm, and that's a healthy thing to teach our children, that it's okay to choose yourself. It's okay.
I think it comes
from
best. Just old tradition of having this idea that if you split up, it's bad, or if you get a divorce, it's bad. Remember when our grandparents and our parents, like, and our great grandparents, everyone was together, but probably miserable, right? And it was like taboo to split up and to have, a split family. And now, and we're more and more so as women and men, I'm sure too, choosing ourselves and our own personal happiness and loving ourselves and realizing that, as much for staying in a marriage and having a happy family, I'm all for that. I mean, that's the dream, right? We all hope that who we marry and have children with is somebody we'll be with long term. But if it ever becomes toxic or traumatic and you see your kids seeing it, it's okay to choose yourself in those moments, because no one's winning with you staying. No one's winning with you choosing to love the idea more than yourself first.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if you're a model of that for your children, I wasn't the best model of that for mine, as far as like loving myself to the point that I'm getting much better at it. But taking time for myself, doing hobbies and things that I enjoy for myself, that always, because I was a single mom for so long, that felt selfish to me, because I felt like they're already down one parent. I don't want to take any more time out of them for myself. But if I had gone away for weekends alone sometimes just to recharge my batteries, or done girls' night out or girls' trips, or done things just that, I think I would have probably had a little bit more bandwidth to take on more than I did. And maybe be more patient, maybe be a little bit, just soften my rough edges a little bit, because I didn't take a lot of time to recharge my batteries when the kids were small. And because it did feel like I was taking time away from them. So I think loving yourself and doing things, and not just doing the action item, but explaining to your kids why you're doing that. When they say, oh, mommy, I don't want you to go away this weekend, to be like, I don't want to be away from you either, honey. I miss you just as much as you miss me, but it's important for mommy sometimes to have her alone time. There is nothing wrong with that. Don't feel mom guilt about that. You're actually modeling a really healthy behavior. Or mommy and daddy need our alone time too. So we're going to go, mommy and daddy are going to have a date weekend or a date night, and you're going to stay with so-and-so, and we'll miss you. We always miss you when we're away from you. But what's important, this is important for us, our relationship, to have alone time. And that's healthy. It's hard at the time to like peel the child off of you and hand them to whoever's watching them. It's hard, but it's so healthy for them to see that.
Absolutely. And the more you do it, the better, the less, the more you see, because you get the text from the babysitter 30 seconds later, like, oh, they're fine. Of course they're fine. They know what they're doing. But yeah, I get that a lot for my kids when I go to the gym and they're just like, oh, we have to go to kids club again. Yeah, mom's moms going and spending time and working out. And I do it for a bunch of reasons, but I do it to show them that it's good to take time for yourself. It's good to feel strong. It's a good stress reliever, but it's easier for me just to be like, oh, you're right. You know, like, no, it's good. It's good to take time for yourself. It's good to take time as a couple. It's good to take time with your friends, because I don't remember my mom ever doing that. And I think as moms, when we become moms, you know, we realize that we're also showing our daughters what it's like to be a mom. And if all you're doing is just waking up and making lunches and serving dinners and cleaning and cooking and all that, then like go out and have a girls' night. Show them it's okay to be a person outside of the mom figure. You know, it's empowering.
Even Cinderella literally was Cinderella. She was like, F you all, I'm going to the ball. So
yeah, exactly. And that's so healthy, because then it shows us that it's okay to do that too when we become moms. You know, it makes you a more well-rounded. You got to make sure all of the boxes are being checked. You know, you can't put all of it into one center focus. So that's super fantastic. And yeah, it's going to suck for a second, but the guilt will just melt off as you're drinking your martini with your girlfriends and being like, oh, it's cool. Like, cause it feels so good. At first it feels weird, but it does feel good.
It does.
So, yeah.
Well, I think we covered a lot today. I'm excited about this topic. I feel like I could keep talking about it for probably a couple more hours, but I think this is one of those podcasts I'll probably go back and listen to again, because I think there were a lot of little nuggets of wisdom here, and we could all kind of take a page from this. I know for me, I have goals this year of being more loving towards myself, and that's something I'm working on now that my kids are out of the house. So I think we can all kind of figure out where we have room for improvement in the way that we're loving.
I feel like a lot of our podcasts are like, okay, I'm awake to the concept. Now what to do about it? Because I feel like the word love, as you said, has been so used so much, and especially for Love Month, that it's like, okay, but what is love? Like, and how do you express love? And how do your children see love? To really like, okay, I love, but like really break it down and think about it and you know, divide it down a little bit is very cool. So I'm glad we talked about it.
I would love to hear what I would love. See, I said it again.
See, there it is. I would really like.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear of what all you guys think about love and how love is an action word for you, like what actions you do to show the people in your life that you love them actively. If you want to share that with us, you can comment on this article. It's coming out the same day as the podcast. Or you can go to Facebook and search She's a Full-On Monet. And there's a discussion board there on our Facebook page, because we would love to hear from you guys as well. Thank you, everyone, again, for coming back week to week. I get excited every week to see how many of you have listened or watched the podcast. And because I'm always excited to share. I feel like we're having a conversation with all of our friends. So it's nice when we're not just talking to each other. It's nice to know that. Yeah.
Nice to know someone's listening.
So thank you guys again. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to bookmark our site, she'safullonmonet.com, and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this podcast, it helps us a lot if you can follow, rate, and review. See y'all next week.